Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our NAEBA Homebuyer Education class. I'm Victoria Ray Henderson. I'm the host of the NAEBA podcast, Listen Up Homebuyers. This is a podcast dedicated to real estate from the buyer's perspective. You can listen to Listen Up Homebuyers on Spotify, on Pandora, wherever you listen to podcasts and your music. This evening's class is going to be taught by Ben Clark. He's the president of the National Association of Exclusive Buyer Agents, which we call NAEBA. And Ben first served as our president back in 2012, and we're so happy to have him back this year to do it all again. Ben has been a licensed exclusive buyer broker in Salt Lake City for 25 years. He's helped countless home buyers navigate this process. He's going to guide us through tonight's course and just kind of help you understand what it really means to be an informed home buyer in today's market. Again, we are going to be recording this class, so please just type your questions into the chat box and they'll get answered. So it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's educator, Ben Clark.
Thank you, Victoria. I'm glad to be here. I'm also super excited for all the people who've signed up. This is such an exciting, sometimes a little bit scary time for you, but that's why we're here, to help walk you through it so that you can feel comfortable making this step and knowing if you're ready to make this step. If you'll all just take a minute and just type in the chat what state you're from. I know before the class started, we had a little bit of that going on, but just kind of let me know where you're from. I know from the signups that you're from all across the United States, so that is fantastic. I'll start out by sharing a little bit about who I am. The picture on the left there, the biggest one, is a picture of me and my family. I've got 3 married children, no grandchildren yet, but and then the others around me are past clients. I call them my family. I have hundreds of past clients that I've helped buy homes, and that's super exciting. My third family is my NAEBA family, and those are other real estate brokers around the country who only represent home buyers. We don't work for sellers at all. We don't list homes. We just look out for buyers, and that's also super exciting. Oh, awesome. Seeing people from Grand Rapids, Arlington Heights, Spokane, Kansas, all across the country. Again, that's great. If you'll now put in the chat, why do you want to buy a home? What are your reasons for buying a home? In a little bit, we'll jump into what the most common reasons are, and we'll see how your answers stack up. So some of the things you need to know: homes are expensive. Homes are not generally less expensive than renting, but there are some reasons why, and we'll talk about that. Buying a home is also a long-term commitment or investment. You need to know that a home is not likely to be a perfect match. I built my current home like I was the contractor and I was out here with a hammer and nails. And after I was done, there were still some things that I'm like, I should have done that a little bit differently. Especially with existing homes, no home is mechanically perfect. And our job as an agent is to help you find the best possible home that's in your area at the best value. And then another key thing is we want you to buy when you are ready. The purpose of this isn't to convince you to buy a home, but to help you know how to do that so that when you're ready, you're making smart steps. So again, why are we doing home buyer seminars? Well, we're here to share information with you so you can make good decisions. I believe that, if you read the news and the headlines, everybody has an agenda, and our purpose is to kind of share what we see is going on in the economy and as we go through life, what the big picture things are, and to share that information with you so you can make those good decisions. One of the things that is a little bit scary, or I guess surprising, this kind of crept up on us over time, is that the median age of first-time home buyers is 38. Now, just about 15 years ago, it was about 29, so less than 30. And you'll hear my story later, but the too long didn't read version of that is I bought my first home 27 years ago, and I was only 22. It was super scary, and it was a little bit hard, but it was worth it. I had got my real estate license and realized, like, hey, if I'm going to try and help people buy homes, I might as well figure this out. And as I figured it out, I realized, yes, it's scary. It's going to take some sacrifices, but this is the smart thing to do. Elizabeth Renter, senior economist from NerdWallet, said, no matter what the economy does over the long term, homes generally appreciate. once you're in home ownership, you do reap the benefits of increased equity over time. And so again, we're focusing on building wealth through home ownership over time. It's not something that there are people who buy homes speculatively to flip them in 1 or 2 years or less. That's not what we're here to share today. We're going to not focus really on timing the real estate market and trying to buy at the bottom, but we're focusing on the time in the market. The longer you're in a home, the longer you can reap the benefits of the equity growth that home ownership gives you. This next slide talks about, well, again, the kind of this concern. If you wait until you're 38, this is housing demand by age. And when you need the most space is this age group of 35 to 64. You need a large home with some land and things like that. If you wait until you're 38, you've missed, the townhome, the condo, the starter home, essentially. And if you wait till after you're 64, then you're ready to go back down into condos and townhomes and such. You don't want a large yard and all of those things. So if you wait until you're 38, it's just going to cost you more to buy a home because those bigger homes are more expensive. Another key piece, we know that rent increases over time, just like home prices, sometimes at a different pace. But if you look at this chart, this shows the rent increases over the last 6-7 decades or so. And the rent increases are in red and inflation is in blue. So again, you can see that rent usually outpaces inflation. And we also know that the median net worth of homeowners is $405,000 higher than that of renters. Again, owning the home, you don't do it until you're ready. But the statistics are that if you do own a home, you will have more wealth over time than those who are renting. And again, it's not cheap, but if you can afford it over the long haul, it should pay huge dividends. So here are the top 5 reasons people buy a home. Let's take a look. Freedom on your answers: freedom from unpredictable rent increases. Rent increases are coming up on the list quite a bit. Wealth stability, creating a home, crafting my own, doing my own things, maybe passing along wealth. Yeah, so building wealth through home equity is one of the key things. One of the key reasons. Historically, homes appreciate over time. It's kind of a forced saving plan. You need to live somewhere, and rather than paying rent, you put it into your home equity. It also allows you to lock in your housing costs. This is very surprising. I just learned this year, I've been doing this for decades, that the United States is one of only a handful, like literally 3 to 5 countries that have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage option. The majority of the world does not have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage option. They're on adjustable rates or shorter, 10-year or less terms for mortgages. So their rates can change. Here we have an opportunity to lock in a large sum of money at an interest rate. And I'm not saying the interest rate is good or bad, but just the fact that we can lock that in for a long term is not available to most people in most parts of the world. It could be argued that that's part of the reason why our homes are worth so much, is because we use 30-year mortgages and such. But again, if you compare it to the world, then it does provide some benefit there. And then gaining control over your living space. People talked about maybe running a home business, maybe having family live with you, maybe painting things your way, or those types of things. And then securing your future and retirement. You talked about that. The majority, or a vast majority of your middle-class families, their wealth is from real estate. And so that's a great way to build some wealth over time. And then, of course, there are some tax benefits. You get mortgage interest deduction and things like that. We don't really tout that as a reason to buy a home, but you do get some tax benefits that renters don't have. Okay, so next factor. While there are occasional dips in home values, I think we can all agree that we're never going back to the prices of 2010. They've gone up so far since then that even if we were to have a correction, if we were in a bubble, we're not going back. We're never going back to 1980s prices. I think my parents paid $24,000 for their home in about 1980. I think their parents paid like $7,000 for one of their first homes back in the 1950s. And let me show you a chart on this here. This is the median sale price of homes sold for the entire United States, starting in about 1963. This is when they started keeping track of this. And you can see this trend line goes up. Now there is 2008 here. Obviously there's a dip there. There's a steadying and a dip there. And even right now we're in kind of a a stag where we're just kind of holding steady, a little bit of appreciation, but not very high, or in some areas depreciation. And nationwide, it looks like from our peak, home prices are actually down a little bit. People have been waiting to buy until home prices came down a little bit. But in general, again, if you were to follow that trend line, there's a bubble and then a correction, a bubble and then a correction, and then a under during COVID, and then it jumped right up here. And so if you were to follow that trend line along, we might be about where things are supposed to be, but hard to say. And I'll show you some other data a little bit later. There are a couple reasons why home prices are holding, even though it's not very affordable. Part of that is that many existing homeowners bought when interest rates were really low and they're just not moving. In fact, some of those that do move keep their home with that low interest rate as an income property for rental income. And so the vast majority, or a bigger portion than normal, of what's holding home prices up is new construction. And new construction prices aren't going down. And the reason is land, labor, materials, none of those things are getting any less expensive. There's also the talk of tariffs. The builders also have to get loans. They have to pay interest on those loans. And then, of course, they're dealing with increased regulation, and that generally means higher prices. The cities want larger homes. They want more tax dollars, so they're not allowing builders to build tiny homes and, what we would call affordable homes. So how could the cost of a new home go down? Builders aren't going to sell every home at a huge loss. Now, they can lower their profits, but it could be argued with all of these other factors being as expensive as they are, that there's not quite as much profit. And we are seeing some home prices dip a little bit for new construction. They're cutting where they can because the buyers have been holding back for so long, waiting for those interest rates to get more favorable. And builders are hurting a little bit and need to actually close some of those loans that they're paying interest on. So there's a little bit of a shift going on right now, I'd say over the last 6 months significantly. Historically, in the last 2 decades or so, since the year 2000, 2.5 decades, we had an oversupply of houses. When I bought my first home, and my second home was in 2004, and they started building like gangbusters. So for sale is the blue, and you can see that they built a ton. They also built a ton of for rent properties. And then about 2015 or so, everybody was dealing with the hangover from 2008. And builders were a lot more cautious. They started building less spec homes. They started waiting for contracts before they would build homes. And that's been going on for a long time. Now that started to change recently, and you can see this undersupply starting to come back, but we're not there yet. There's a demand for about 2 million new homes per year from adult children moving out, people getting married. There's about 2 million new households being formed every year. And there's only about 1.5 million homes being built per year. So that means nationwide, we're 500,000 homes short every year. And that just kind of compounds. People are staying with their parents longer. They're doubling up in homes. There's multi-generational purchases happening. People buying with people that they are not related to as investments. And that brings us to the second factor of affordability, that one that we're all waiting to take a dive, and that's interest rates. Oh, really quick, let me just jump back here. We didn't talk about this one, but there are 3 main factors that affect home affordability. One of those is prices. We just talked about that a little bit. And the second one is interest rates. And the third one is incomes. So we're going to jump over here and talk about what's going on with mortgage interest rates. Let's see, is this the one? Okay, so where are mortgage interest rates headed? Well, we don't know. Most economists are predicting that it's going to kind of hang out around where it is right now for a while. They expect slight improvement over the next 2 years, maybe around 5.5%, 6% range, but they're all in agreement. We're not going to see 3% or 4% interest rates anytime soon, possibly never again. If you look at historically here, again, from the 1970s, rates were about 7.5%. They got all the way up to the 18% in the 1980s. We're all aware of kind of that. And then ever since then, they've had rises and dips. This is typical for it to kind of bounce around. But in general, a downward trend all the way till COVID, when they got about as low as you can get, 2.5% for a long term. Again, you're locking in hundreds of thousands of dollars for a 30-year term. That was basically unheard of. They were telling us, economists in 2017, that they needed to raise interest rates then to curb inflation and other things. But I think the housing market was just so gangbusters that there were a lot of people telling them not to do that, and lenders were just going to continue to lend money at those low rates because there was a lot of economic activity going on. And again, during COVID, especially, one of the reasons they lowered rates so far was to get economic activity happening. But ever since then, this is just last week, the new numbers come out tomorrow, but the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage in the United States, 6.72. Now, there are loan programs for first-time home buyers and other things where you may get lower rates than that. Different parts of the country may have better rates. Your credit score affects your rates, all those types of things. We'll get into that in a minute. But in general, interest rates look like they're going to kind of stabilize in this range, which is what the economists expect. So another factor, and this is something where I've only got a chart for my local market, and that's real median household income. And this only goes back to 1984 when they started tracking this one on the FRED. This is the US Census Bureau. And if you go to fred.stlouisfed.org, and we'll send you a follow-up email with some links to some of these things, you can put your state in there and kind of see what the median household income does. I know when I worked, when I first got my first job in college, I think minimum wage was $3 and something an hour. Obviously, it's much higher than that now. In general, as you can see, there's peaks and valleys and some fluctuation, but incomes have gone up significantly over the last few decades. We would expect that 10 years from now, and this is the median, this is everybody. This isn't just you. Like if you stay in your career and you improve yourself and you get new jobs, and you should be able to get pay raises, and your income should be able to go up over time. Wage growth is higher than average, and they should continue to rise, but wages are sluggish. They don't react as quick as home prices and interest rates. Economists are telling us it'll take 5 to 10 years for wages to catch up. But as you can see here, they're above the average and they're above zero. So wages are growing. That doesn't necessarily mean that your wages are growing at your job. So that's one of the things that I bring up a little bit later. If you have an opportunity to look for ways to increase your income, keep your eyes open for that. This shows that this big bubble here is the rent growth. I don't know if you guys remember 2021 to 2023, there was a huge rent growth. Some of my clients' rents more than doubled during that time period, which is what made them look into home ownership. But and this is the wage growth right now. It's been outpacing for, what does it say, 30 months or something like that, of wage growth being more than housing price growth. And when I say housing price, this chart is rents, but house prices are at about the same. Like I said, in most of the country, they're maybe 2%. They're certainly not increasing at an average of 4%. So wages are outpacing the increased cost of housing at this time. This just shows you again that the wages are lagging behind. The home prices skyrocketed here between 2020 and mid 2022, but they are still kind of rising in some markets. And there's not much we can really do about the interest rates personally, or the home prices. But we can, as I said before, look for opportunities to potentially increase your income or reduce your expenses. Maybe you've got a whole bunch of extra monthly subscriptions to things that you could cut back on to help save to prepare for home ownership. So I've had a number of first-time buyer clients in the last couple of years who were not able to buy a home, but became able to do so just because they looked for new employment. Now, I'm not suggesting you put your current job at risk. If you feel like it's safe to have a discussion with your current employer about needing more money because you'd like to buy a home, if you feel safe having that conversation, feel free to do that. But also just keep your eyes open for opportunities. Job growth is doing very well. We're not suffering. There's companies are having a hard time keeping all the employees they need. And locally in our market, we've got a lot of tech sector stuff. And a lot of clients are having to switch jobs to get the higher wages. Their current employer doesn't really want to just give them more money. But if they leave, they have to pay more money to the next person to get them. And the other companies are offering to pay more money to get them. So it kind of just depends. Again, I don't know if your field of work is the same, but keep your eyes open. And if you don't have your eyes open, you won't see opportunities. But if you do, you might see those. So let's see. Oh, another thing is when you meet with a lender, if you determine that your current income isn't enough to buy a home in your market, I mean, you could move to another market. That's easier said than done, right? But you could at least ask the question, okay, well, what type of income would I need to have? How low do I need to get my debts in order to afford a home? So this is something we can also put into an email follow-up, but it just asks you the questions, are you financially ready? What's your current income? What's your current housing payment obligation? Are you able to save money each month? Or are you just barely getting by? Is your income stable? Is your income likely to go up over time? Do you plan to live in the area for at least 5 years, or can you do your job remotely? Will your housing needs change in the next 5 years? We have had clients who buy a home and then have 3 kids in 3 years, and the home that they bought for 2 people doesn't fit anymore. So kind of think about your long-term plans. Again, it's a long-term investment. Don't buy for today, but think about what am I going to need in 5 years. I've also had older clients buy a big home for their bunch of kids, and then their kids all get married, and then they're in this big home and they're like, I can't do stairs, it's too big to take care of, and then they also need to sell. So just kind of think about the medium term future when you purchase a home, because it's a longer term commitment. So again, you want to be ready to set roots. It's not something where you can pick up like rent and just move every 6 months somewhere else. We generally recommend, this is me, not NAEBA necessarily, but 5 to 7 years minimum. So you want to know, hey, I'm going to set roots. I'm going to be here. That allows you to outride any dips in housing costs, as we talked about. They're not often, but they do occur in some markets. It also allows you to build enough equity to cover the costs of buying and selling, which we'll talk about a little bit later. It gives time for that equity to grow and build. So if you feel ready for home ownership, or when you feel you're ready, there's 6 easy steps. I say easy steps, but there's 6 steps on the path to home ownership, and each one has a handful of steps of its own, which is why it's important to have a professional on your side guiding you through them. And all of the steps are important, but we're focused the most on these first 2 because they're really important. They affect how the rest of the process goes. And the first one is this one: finding an agent with your best interest at heart. The majority of real estate agents are trained to sell properties, to get deals done. They're focused on sales. An exclusive buyer agent, and that's our association, is an association of exclusive buyer agents. They're a different breed, we say. And I like to say, keep it simple. Whenever possible, you want to work with an exclusive buyer's agent. An exclusive buyer's agent is on your side, doesn't list homes, doesn't have any homes that they're obligated to sell. They also won't be working for the seller in the same transaction. There are brokerages that try to do that. You want, again, to find an agent with your best interest in mind. That is not the listing agent. The listing agent works for the seller. So I kind of had a chuckle, and it was a little frustrating. I saw the Homes.com Super Bowl ad, not bad mouthing them. They are the only place where you can connect directly with the listing agent, but you don't want to connect directly with the listing agent. You want somebody on your side who can look out for you and not share private information, et cetera, with the other party. Okay, so finding a great real estate agent. If there's no EBA in your area, the National Association of Exclusive Buyer Agents can help you find a good buyer's agent in your area. We recommend you interview at least 3 buyer's agents. Don't rush this process. The majority of buyers and sellers, this is one of the biggest purchases or sales that they'll make in their lifetime, and most of them interview 1 agent. So we recommend interviewing 2 or 3 if possible. And what you're looking for in a buyer's agent, ideally, again, an exclusive buyer agent. You're looking for a brokerage that doesn't list homes or represent sellers, so they can always be on your side. They'll always have your best interest at heart. They don't have incentives or obligations to promote or sell any specific homes. They'll negotiate on your behalf, and they can guide you through the process, helping you avoid mistakes. As I said before, they're not available in all areas. We're a smaller group of real estate agents focused on buyer representation only. We're giving up that listing side of the business, and so we're a smaller group. If they're not available in your area, if they are, then of course the National Association of Exclusive Buyer Agents can connect you with one. If they're not, or even if they are, you want to be looking for someone with a lot of experience representing buyers in your area. Ideally, that's someone specialized in helping buyers and not taking listings, so that you don't run into that conflict of interest if they also represent the seller if you want to buy that particular home. So one other thing you just need to know about real estate agents, on August 17th of last year, there were changes made to how real estate agents are compensated. And as a buyer, you just need to know that the new law requires you sign an agreement with a real estate agent that details how the agent will be paid. Agents cannot show you, at least in my market, a house if you don't fill out that agreement, which is, again, why you slow that process down, find a good agent first before you get committed to anybody. In our market, you can either pay the buyer agent directly. That's pretty rare. Or you ask the seller to pay for the buyer agent fee in the purchase agreement, in the purchase of the home, which is how it used to be done. That fee came from the proceeds of the transaction. Every market and every brokerage is different, however, so you'll want to talk to your buyer's agent before you hire them about how they will get paid for helping you. Okay, so now you have a buyer's agent and you want, and they're going to help you through the process. So what's next? Well, financing. You can't usually buy a home without any money. So this is pretty important, right? So how much should you spend on a home? Well, you need somebody, again, with your best interest in mind to help you figure that out. And that would be a credible mortgage lender. I wrote credible. That's not a brand name or anything like that. Just you need someone you can trust. You want them to be thorough with analyzing your finances. You don't want surprises mid-transaction that you no longer qualify and you've spent money on appraisals and things like that. You can find a credible mortgage lender through a trusted buyer's agent, through family and friends who've worked with somebody, things like that. But pre-approval is imperative. I say that not just for you making an offer on a home, which is very important, but so that they can evaluate all your income, your debts. They'll pull your credit. They'll look, and I want you to look at the total payment numbers, not just the principal and interest payment. Some lenders will just say, oh, it's only, $2,000 a month, which is a lot sometimes. But there may be HOA dues, there may be utilities and those types of things. And we'll look at those in a minute. Ask any questions. You don't want to go into this blind. A good lender and a good buyer's agent will listen to your questions and answer your questions. They won't be annoyed. If you run into a lender or an agent that's annoyed that you're asking them questions about financing this purchase, you should walk away. Okay, just another point, unknown lenders can be risky. There are good lenders that offer financing online. So again, that's not saying online lenders are bad, but you can run into some, if you're just randomly choosing lenders, that's not a good idea. There are ways you can shop loans and you can ask for references and things like that. A good buyer's agent should know about different loan types and programs to help you and can help you find credible lenders. All right, back to pre-approval. Well, we recommend all our clients get pre-approved. It shows you're serious when you make an offer. It lets you know as the buyer upfront if there are any errors or unresolved issues or considerations that could pop up on your credit reports or other issues that could cause problems with your home purchase. Another thing you need to know, the pre-approval usually lasts about 90 days, about 3 months. It's not a big deal if your pre-approval expires. You just get the lender updated pay stubs and they just push you out another one, usually within 24 hours. It's not that big of a deal. And you don't need to work with the lender that gets you pre-approved. You can work with any other lender. You're not obligated just because a lender does a pre-approval for you. Okay, what credit score do you need? This is a question that we get a lot from first-time buyers. Well, the key thing is the better your score, the better your interest rate. Not that you're, let's just say you can have a score as low as 500, between 500 and 579, and get an FHA loan. You may qualify for a loan with that, but you'll need 10% down. If you're in that situation where your credit score is between 500 and 580, I would recommend talking with a lender who can help you with credit repair. You can save a lot of money on interest over time and upfront costs related to getting a mortgage if you can get your credit score up, I would say, over 600. And ideally, obviously, again, the better your score, the better the interest rate. Okay, did I ask the question, what percent of money do you need of the purchase price for a down payment? If I didn't ask that, I don't think I did. Will you guys type in the chat what you think the minimum dollars percentage-wise you need to buy a home? Because we hear a lot of numbers online on radio shows and things like that. Okay, I'm seeing 20, 20, 10. Okay, let's take a look at 20. It seems a very popular answer. 20 is a number that we hear a lot. Let me show you this graph. So 70% of Americans, 10 to 20, think they need to put at least 10% down to buy a home. And you don't need to. It's maybe a smart idea, but you don't necessarily need to. And here's why it might be a smart idea. The more you put down, so do I need 20% down? No, but PMI, that's probably the biggest thing here. That's private mortgage insurance. And what that means is that the less money you put down, the more at risk the lender is. And so they put everybody's money that's at risk into a pot for mortgage insurance so that if somebody defaults, they can make a claim and get made whole. So again, you're a higher risk if you don't put any money down. If you put more money down and they need to foreclose, then they get more of that money back when the home sells. Hopefully we avoid all of those things. But the more money you put down, generally, the less that monthly PMI is. And if you put 20% down, then there's zero PMI. You don't have to pay mortgage insurance at all. So that's why you hear 20% a lot. Very smart if you can. I'm seeing 25% on there as well. If you're an investor or buying a second home, there are some loan programs that require more than 20% for some of those programs. So again, there's a lot of lenders, a lot of loan programs. One of the key things is to to ask around, find some good lenders, look for some various options. As mentioned before, there are buyer assistance programs. Some of those are second mortgages. They may have a slightly higher rate than the first mortgage, but it can count towards your down payment requirement. And that might overall offset some of your costs. And down payment assistance is also some cities or counties or states have down payment assistance programs for low income housing. We just saw locally a bump in the amount of home you could buy. The amount you could, the problem was if you qualified for down payment assistance in our area, you couldn't afford the price of the home. So they've finally lowered that you can make a little bit more money and still afford it because you couldn't afford the home price here. So those things change as well. So it's good to have an agent that can check in, kind of see, or a lender who can look at the different programs available. Also, you want to make sure that you're aware of extra costs. During your transaction, you'll have the loan closing costs, title fees, recording fees, and appraisal. Those numbers vary around the country. There's a lot of different things, different ways that home transactions happen. Some states, the seller pays part of the title insurance. Other states, the buyer pays it all. Some places, the seller may pay it all. Varying issues around the country. You'll also want to pay for a home inspection. We'll talk about that in a minute. That does cost you out of pocket directly to the home inspector, which is why it's listed as an extra cost. And then just be aware, after you purchase a home, you may be renting and utilities may be included. You don't feel like you're paying taxes or insurance. You probably are, because again, remember, if you're renting a home, somebody bought that home and they're paying these things and they're generally charging you more than their costs for all of those things. But yeah, you don't see those. You don't have to pay those out of pocket. So those are things you want to make sure you're taking into account when you make a home purchase. You'll also have yard equipment, if you have a home with land, or HOA fees if you're in a place where they take care of snow removal and, maybe there's a clubhouse and a pool and those types of things. You might need tools, for maintenance and you might need to hire people for maintenance and repairs. And then in addition, there's generally 6 to 8% in costs when you sell. Again, those title fees and closing fees and real estate agent fees and those types of things. Let's see. I'm just checking the chat here really quick to see if there were any additional questions. And then our tip is you don't want to go in and spend your last dollar out of your checking account at closing. You want to have some reserves so that you can take some time to get used to it. An interesting thing is once you do close, you typically have at least 30 days before your first mortgage payment, sometimes 45 days even. But you want to have some extra reserves. You don't want to be that tight. And so I would say save more than the down payment that is required, just so you feel comfortable being ready to take that next step. Okay, a word about homebuyer programs. Just because a program exists doesn't mean it's a good deal. There are programs where you have to meet eligibility requirements. As I said, you may not qualify. You may need to pay them back. A lot of them now, there used to be like free money, and now they'll put liens on your property. They'll give you the money. It still may be a good deal, but it still may not. So it's just important to read through the paperwork of any grant program or down payment assistance program that you qualify for to see what the requirements are, what you're obligating yourself to if you do that program. There are often limitations on where you can buy. If it's a city grant, you probably have to buy within the city limits. And then some of them require a lender to be approved to offer that program. So if your lender doesn't offer that program, you may need to switch lenders. And then just be aware that sometimes those programs, they are meant for a purpose to help you if you have less down payment or what have you, but because you're more risk if you have a lower down payment, your interest rate may be higher, and the fees, there may be extra fees associated with those. So if you do have a large down payment, you may be better off not using one of the free money programs or the assistance programs. The only way to know is to do the math and sit down with the lender and the agent and figure that out. So, all right. Again, yeah, buyer's agent, incredible lender, can help you explore options. Here's a couple on here we may not have talked about. So starter homes, very important for getting started. Grants, permanent rate buy downs, that buys down your interest rate for the whole 30 years if you have a 30-year loan, or the whole 15 years if you have a 15-year loan. There's temporary buy downs for 2 years where you have a 2% less and then 1% less, and then the final rate stays. Those are called graduated payment loans. Some clients I've had buy a triplex. I had one buy a triplex. He lived in one unit, rented the other 2 units. So some loans will now allow you to qualify using the rental income from the other units in the home you're building, and sometimes even from a mother-in-law apartment or an ADU on the property. 40-year mortgage, I'm not recommending this by any means. We don't want anyone to say NAEBA recommended 40-year mortgages. For some people, they may decide that that's an option that they want to do. They are offered in our area, in our market. Seller financing as well, typically with higher down payments and higher rates. And those are typically for people whose credit is bad and they can't get a normal loan, but they may be just a seller who's willing to offer seller financing, and the terms may be good as well. So again, looking into all these different things, first-time home buyer programs, Home Ready, Home Path, other programs, co-buying, as I mentioned. Again, we're not necessarily recommending that. Multi-generational homes we're seeing a lot of, where parents need to downsize, the kids need to upsize, and they'll buy a home in the middle, and they'll split it, and the parents will live upstairs, the kids in the basement, or they'll just all live together and they'll have their own areas and things like that. So a lot of different ways you can try and make homes affordable. So as I said before, you're not committed to work with a lender just because they pre-approve you. Okay, so those were the longer portions. Now we're going to speed up a little bit here. The home search. Well, the home search is what is the most fun part, I would say, for most buyers. An agent's going to help you set up a home search. They should be able to help you get notifications of new listings that fit your criteria as they come available. That's something you can adjust at any time. You don't feel like, oh, I told them 3 bedrooms, but I really need 4. I can't change that. Yeah, just call your agent up, make adjustments at any time. And then you'll start visiting and touring homes, and that's a lot of fun. It's just a really fun, exciting time to get out and see what you can buy most of the time. Sometimes you get out and you're like, this is all junk. Or sometimes you're like, there's too many options, and your agent can help sit you down and reevaluate what you're doing. A couple of things to keep in mind. If you do go to open houses or builder model homes, that is fun. It's really cool, but you don't have to sign in. If they make you sign in, I tell my clients to put my name and my phone number down. So because they'll just start marketing to you and emailing you and things like that. Just remember also that the person in the home, the listing agent works for the seller. The builder's agent works for the builder. They're not on your side. You don't really want to get into any details about your finances or your motivation, even innocuous seeming questions such as where are you moving from, or the small chat is all information that they can use to help determine your motivation and what they might be able to get from you. And that all that information they have to share with the seller. Any contact with the seller's agent, builder's agent, even when you're touring homes, there are Ring doorbells on most homes, and there are inside cameras. I tell all my clients, it's okay to show a little emotion. I say don't show emotion, but just don't be over the top and say, oh, I'd pay more than they're asking for this place or anything like that, because they're watching. We've had where the agent has shared that they've heard some of that information. When you talk to an agent, make sure you ask a bunch of questions. That keeps them from being able to ask you those questions that might cause you to overshare. And just realize, again, anything you say can and will be used against you. Okay, so the next step. So you found a home. That's super awesome. That it's not done yet. You'll need to go through offers and negotiations. Now, this part's really fun for me. I'm trained in negotiating, and it's very fun, but it is often the most stressful phase for my buyers. One of the hardest things is when we recommend that they give a longer response time to a seller. for them to just sit there and not have any sort of response from the seller is very nerve-wracking, especially if negotiations have been tense. But it's where the home buying process gets real. Your agent's going to prepare a market analysis. You'll look at other recently sold homes in the area of about the same size, and you'll kind of determine what the value range of the home is. You'll strategize. In my case, a good agent will talk to the other agent and try and gather as much information as we can about the seller's motivation, where they're going, what their financial situation is, what's their timeline. And the reason is because then we can strategize and put together an offer that can be competitive. There may be multiple offers in some markets today. In a lot of the markets, there's kind of there are two markets going on. There are listings that come on the market and still sell within a week. And then there are listings that come on the market and just don't sell at all. And so you have, sometimes you may be in a market where there's a lot of homes lasting a long time, but a new home may come on the market and all the buyers will jump on that. And that's because buyers can be picky right now. You can be picky right now. Back during COVID, a home would hit the market. I'd have to be out there with my client within an hour or two. And there were agents lined up with clients to spend their 5 minutes in the home. And then you had to write an offer within, before the end of the day, and they had 39 offers and somebody was going to overpay. So it was very competitive. It's generally, well, I would say across the board, probably not that competitive as it was at that time. You still may run into situations where the home might be underpriced, or it might just be a very nice home and they're not, trying to get top dollar. So you might still be able to get a good deal. But if you have an experienced agent on your side, they'll help you with all of that stuff. And we could say more than that, but like I said, each market's a little bit different. So you'll need to talk to a local buyer's agent to know kind of what's going on. One other thing, just to be aware of, contracts are usually backed by earnest money. Earnest money is kind of a part of your down payment. It's just money that you put down that says that you're serious about, it makes your offer look serious. If you put, it's money that goes to the seller if you default, if you don't go through with the transaction. Now, that doesn't mean if you find something wrong with the house or if it appraises for less than the purchase price, there are contingencies that your agent should put in the offer or can put in the offer to protect you. Gives you a time period to do due diligence and to have an appraisal done, and then you would get your earnest money back if your contract states that. Again, I can't get into too many specifics because contracts across the United States are slightly different, but just be aware an agent on your side should be putting in contingencies to protect your best interests. Whereas an agent that works for a seller may put really short deadlines and make it very difficult for you to get out and be protected if you do find something amiss with the property. Back to loans really quick. Once you are under contract, once they accept your contract, you need to not buy a new car, change jobs, or change banks. All of these actions can derail your home loan process. But other than that, the next step is to just do your due diligence that I talked about just a little bit earlier. So due diligence is home inspections, evaluations. You can look at utility bills, whatever you want to regarding the property. And you do have the ability to back out without losing your deposit if your agent has put that contingency in your contract. A home inspection is one of the key points. You want to do it shortly after acceptance, so that you know whether or not you want to keep spending money on the appraisal or going through this process if you find something major with the property, so you can back out while you're still protected. You'll pay the inspector directly. It's a visual inspection. Some inspectors have tools to look behind walls, the thermography and thermal cameras and things to look for leaks and missing insulation and other things. Our tips are use a professional. I recommend you're always there if possible, not necessarily for the whole 2 or 3 hours they're there, but for a walkthrough overview. So you're on site with the home inspector while they say, this is a problem here and this is a problem there. I always go. I know not every agent does. Every brokerage kind of has their own rules regarding that, but I find it's hard for me to negotiate for my client if I haven't seen the issue. If I have seen it, I can usually be a lot more forceful about this needs to be done. I once had somebody call me and say, what are you talking about for the one inspection I missed? And I said, I don't know what I'm talking about. So I had to go meet the inspector out there with the agent, and we figured it out and we got it worked out in my client's favor. But some issues may need follow-up. Just because a home has issues, every house will have some issues on a home inspection, even new construction. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a deal breaker. What you're primarily looking for are these critical and costly components of a home. They're the expensive things like a roof, the foundation. You don't want to buy a house with bad foundation. Windows, not really a big deal, but they're expensive. Mechanical systems, the heating, the plumbing, the cooling, the air conditioning, electrical systems, the driveway, drainage. You want to kind of evaluate the whole thing, and a professional home inspector can help you do that. What you're looking for is experience, certifications. Some states don't require a license. You want them to have a checklist so that they make sure they check everything. You want them to have equipment to do the inspection, and that they're unbiased. You don't want them, or if anything, that they're biased for you, the buyer, not trying to get the deal to go through, but just letting you know what is the situation. And then also realize that a home inspection isn't the only due diligence you can do. You should ask your buyer's agent for a list of common due diligence items that you could or should look into. We provide our clients a checklist. I'm not sure if that's common nationwide, but a good agent should have a checklist, or you can just Google a due diligence checklist for, and questions that you should be looking into when you're buying a home, and make sure that you go through all of those different things. Different parts of the country have different climates, different pest issues, different laws and regulations. So again, an exclusive buyer's agent is not a home inspector or a zoning code expert or what have you, but if you let them know what issues you are interested in looking into, they can point you in the right direction and get you answers to those questions. I personally recommend talking to the neighbors. You're going to live next door to them if you buy the house, right? It's possible that not all agents will do this. It's something that I offer. You can ask your agent if they'll go with you. It's probably, for most of my buyer clients, less comfortable for them to knock on a door and introduce and say, hey, we're buying next door. We're thinking about it. What do you know about the home? What do you know about the neighborhood? Are there any issues? I have found people are very open, at least in our market, maybe not everywhere, but they'll tell you about the goofy neighbor who plays music till 2 a.m, or they'll tell you that they've seen a plumbing truck, coming and doing, cleaning the sewage line multiple times, every month or every 2 weeks they're over there. And that saved my clients thousands of dollars that the home inspector could not have known, even doing the inspection, that they just had those things cleaned out. So very important, I would say. And again, if you do buy it, you're committed long-term to be this person's neighbor. So I think it's a good idea to go introduce yourself during the due diligence period, so you can cancel out if you feel uncomfortable living somewhere. All right. Once you've done your due diligence and you've signed off, or you've agreed on the repairs that they'll do or the credit that they'll give you so you can get repairs done, then you just need to finish obtaining your loan. And all that really is to provide everything the lender asks you for as soon as possible. That's tax returns, pay stubs, bank statements. They may need a letter of explanation. The best lenders will ask you for all of this stuff up front. They'll hound you. You'll be like, man, this person's annoying. But the truth is, that's a sign of a good lender. You want them to run into any issues they might have during that first week that you're working with them. You don't want to get under contract, pay for home inspections, pay for appraisal, and then find out that they didn't put down that you were self-employed or something like that. That may be a major issue and a deal breaker. So again, work with your lender to get everything to them that they ask for. And then the last step is just you do your final walkthrough, make sure repairs are done, make sure that, if they moved out, they didn't do any damages and things like that. Your lender, your exclusive buyer's agent, your closing attorney, if you have one, some states use those regularly, hopefully help facilitate a smooth transaction. And you can get your keys and move in and unpack boxes and have your housewarming parties and all of that good stuff. So I want to share just a couple more quick points, and then I'll tell my story, and then I'll end about buying a home. So number one is to use common sense. Headlines are sensational by design. There's things like this. I'm just going to walk you through one of them. Buyers making the median income can't afford the median priced home. That's been a headline for the last 6 months or so. And common sense, a wise man, or as my kids say, a wise guy once said, if you can't afford the median priced home, buy a home that is less than the median priced home. By definition, around 1/2 of the homes for sale cost less than the median priced home. I mean, use common sense. So again, if you look at some of these headlines, there's quite a few of them. you can have your agent sit down with headlines and go through them with you. I have some clients who do that. They call me up and they say, what does this really mean? And we walk through it. Number two, adjust your expectations. So we went through a time period where interest rates were really low and people could buy a starter home that was much larger, that was nicer, that was in a nicer part of town. Those days are gone for now, at least, and probably for a long time. A starter home is a smart way to start. It's not usually 3,000 square feet with a 3-car garage, 6 bedrooms, 6 baths or 3 bathrooms on a large lot in the most desirable or expensive area, but they do get you in the door and start building that wealth. I'm in the home that I'm in now because I bought a starter home. Well, I'll tell that story in a few minutes. And part of the reason that I'm excited that you guys are here is because you're changing your thinking from I can't buy a home, which is where a lot of people start, to can I buy a home? And that's where you're here. And I want you to leave here thinking, how can I buy a home? And asking that question, finding professionals who can help you get on the right path to being able to do that. And then the last thing here, just what types of homes. You don't have to buy a single family home. You can buy condos and townhomes. Pros and cons to that. So a good agent should sit you down. Again, there are HOA fees. There are other issues. Again, pros and cons. It just depends on your situation. So my story, what's my story? Well, in 1998, I got married in 1997. In 1998, I bought my first home. Interest rate, the 30-year fixed rate was 7.25%. Well, gee, that's a little bit higher than it is today. And I say things were not that much different. Obviously, things have changed over time, but interest rates were 7.25%. My median income, my income, I just married, was 19% less than the median income. And then, and this is kind of what got in my mind back then, like, hey, if you can't afford the median priced home, buy one that's less. So we bought a home about 30% below the median priced home. It was a starter home. It had no garage, no sprinkler system, no air conditioning. It had this swamp cooler on the top, but it didn't really work. And neighbors who had bought just 3 or 4 years earlier paid 20 to 30% less for their homes. It's not that much different. It was hard. It was scary. I had a lot of friends who didn't buy, and their homes cost them more, and it was harder to get in for them by waiting. Things are changing in most markets. Incomes are increasing, as we took a look at. Price appreciation has slowed, and in some cases even dipped a little bit. So that's great for buyers. Interest rates have stopped climbing. I won't say they're going down. They're, like I said, kind of hanging out there. Inventory is on the rise, though. You don't have to be as rushed about the process of doing it. And sellers are more negotiable today than they were in 2020 to 2024. You basically had to buy a home regardless of the issues or walk away. That was it. They would not pay a dime for anything because they had other buyers that would just buy it. It's a little bit different. The shift has happened to where buyers have a little more leverage, a little more ability to ask for. Every one of my buyers has asked for repairs and got it in the last 6-8 months, and quite a bit of ability to negotiate on price and things like that. So that's great. There are some benefits to buying soon. Again, don't buy before you're ready. But if you're ready, if you've saved up and you're comfortable, inventory is on the rise. You have more power. You can take your time. Prices are unlikely to go down significantly. Now, some markets are different than others. So again, make sure you talk to someone you trust in your area. This is something you've heard agents say, and the news loves this phrase, buy the home, or let's see, marry the home and date the rate. Well, I say you marry and date both of those things. So, but there is a benefit if you're going to buy a home for the long term and you're in it for the long term. If interest rates do go down, and you've maintained your credit and such, you should have an opportunity to refinance that home and get a lower interest rate. But if interest rates go up from here and they go to 7.5%, 8%, then you'll be better off having bought now than if you wait. If you also wait until they come down before you jump on it, I believe, and Barbara Corcoran and a lot of economists, there's a lot of buyers just waiting for that rate to get into the 5s again. If you wait till they get into the 5s, competition will explode because there is this big backlog of people who are doubling up in houses and things like that. And that will put huge upward pressure on prices in most markets, if not all markets. So kind of 5 big picture takeaways. Housing isn't getting significantly cheaper. Starter homes get you in the game. Buy before rates go down. Win if they do, win if they don't. Get an agent on your side, hire an exclusive buyer agent, and buy when it makes sense. So that is the path to home ownership. Congratulations, you are now smarter than 95% of your peers. And thank you for your time. Thank you for letting me share this with you. We'll check the chat and see if there's any Q&As, and I think we're going to open it up to Victoria as well to answer some questions. So where are we at, Victoria?
Yeah, so actually, we have a couple questions, but I wanted to bring in Mike Crowley if he would join us. He's a longtime NAEBA member to answer some of the questions. Mike, can you jump on? And
And I'm trying to stop sharing my screen here. Did it stop or is it still going?
uh,
I am here. I'm in my
oh,
car, but yes, I could answer questions if there was
oh,
one specific.
hey, great, great. We had a couple questions I wanted you to touch on. One of our members here, or class attendees, says, "How has the offer process changed now that buyers are responsible for their own agent fee?" You want to start off on that?
Yeah, that depends on the areas. I know there are some states where sellers have grasped onto this and says, "Oh, this is wonderful. We are not going to pay any form of the buyer's fees. Why would we do that?" Fortunately, I live in a market where 90+% of our sellers are still willing to pay a portion of the buyer's fee just to make sure that that buyer is coming to the table and they may not otherwise be able to afford to. Because the fees were never offered just for no reason. It was just a long time ago they realized that buyers already have an uphill battle to put enough money together for a home. And the cooperating brokerage fee is just enough to make sure that they don't have to come up with that additional 8, 10, 12, $15,000, which is a big difference. So
Yeah.
in my market, and you and Ben could speak to yours, but in my market, I have not had my own clients have to pay me outside of pocket. I've been compensated on their behalf from the sellers. Consistently for the past year since August of last year.
Great. How about you, Ben?
Yeah, things are a little bit different here. We typically, most of my clients will put in the offer. Our contract has been changed locally to allow the buyer to specify that they want the seller to pay so much toward their buyer agent fee. As Mike said, a vast majority of times they'll agree to do that. They realize that, historically, both commissions came from the purchase price of the home. Home prices have not dropped 3% or what have you, with commission buyer agent fees not being included on the MLS.
Mhm.
And so most sellers are still aware, and most sellers are going to be buyers, are aware that especially for first time buyers, they probably need some assistance from the seller. I personally would like to work on trying to get legislation or regulations changed so that buyers can pay their agent directly in their loan rather than in the purchase contract, because then you don't have to disclose how much you're paying your agent to the seller and have them potentially argue over it. We do have sellers who sometimes counteroffer and say, well, we only want to pay this much toward your agent, which leaves our client on the hook for the other. And so we just usually use our negotiations to kind of make sure that it comes out in the transaction in some other way. So we've been fairly fortunate at also not running into any hard-nosed sellers who would just not do that. Now the market is more of a buyer's market. I don't know how it would be if it was, a heavy seller's market. I know even in a heavy seller's market here during COVID, when you had 39 offers on a home, one of the tactics of some of the buyers was to say, we'll pay our own agent.
Mm.
So I mean, but right now the buyers have some leverage. So again, probably a good time if you're going to buy a home to ask sellers to contribute. And again, market dependent. You want to talk to your local agent to kind of see what's
Yeah.
going on, so you don't make offers that don't work.
I would just add one thing. Before you sign any agreement with any agent, you just remember that you're the one who decides the length of that agreement. So there's going to be a start date and an end date. You need to be comfortable with that. You need to be comfortable with those terms. Make sure you check to see, is there any admin fee? Is there any additional fee that's being charged? So make sure you look at that before you sign any kind of buyer broker agreement. And Mike, like you, I've had good luck. I've so far nobody has paid me out of pocket for my services.
Yeah, I saw in the chat some questions about HOA.
Yeah.
It is more common in new construction. I think some people prioritize cleanliness and the neighborhood and the amenities and, somebody taking care of lawns and snow removal in Utah is an issue and things like that. So even my neighborhood has a very small, it's $30 a month HOA fee. But a lot of newer communities do have some sort of HOA fee. You do want to read those documents as part of your due diligence and make sure you can use the property how you want to, that there's nothing crazy in there. Um, and I can't speak, there's literally thousands, tens of thousands of HOAs around the country with their own rules. So you want to look at those. As far as do you have to buy a home within an HOA? Again, that would depend on your market. There, even in my market where a lot of the new stuff has them, a lot of the old ones don't. And
Mhm.
so you might be looking at something a little bit older, but there are also brand new communities that don't have HOAs either. So you can put that or have your agent put that in your home search to exclude homes that have an HOA if you don't want to live in one with an HOA, or to include an HOA if you want to live in one with an HOA. Out here, we have some larger communities, some larger HOAs that provide internet. They have lakes that you can ride your boats on, fitness centers that are included in your fees, and internet and all that stuff. And some people like it and they want that. So it's just, again, what you want to do. Have your agent help you with a home search that excludes or includes those if that's important to you.
Mike, I wanted to ask if you could answer this question that came up. It was about any kind of pull on your credit for a pre-approval. Is Mike not there?
I can answer that while we wait for him to jump back on. What I've been told by my lenders is that there's when you initially pull your credit for a home purchase, there may be a very minimal adjustment to your score for the first pull if it's a hard pull. However, the government wants you to shop lenders. So having a second or a third lender pull your credit in that same time period for the same purpose, a mortgage for a mortgage loan purpose will not reduce your score any further. And having it repulled when you get close to closing, again, shouldn't impact it significantly. And most of the time, if they have ranges where you get adjustments to your loan based on your credit score. So again, that's something when your lender pulls your credit, you can say, how close am I to that border where I might get a worse interest rate? And for a lot of people, there is no adjustment. There's a wide range at the top. It's very wide where you don't get any adjustment to your credit score. If your score is over 700 or 720 or 740 or 780, you probably are paying the same rate. If your score is 500 versus 580 or 579 versus 581, there may be, so you maybe want to be careful about what you do with your credit while you're looking to buy a home. And the lender, you can ask them and they can tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing to keep that score up if you're on the border of qualifying or not qualifying.
I think we have Mike again. Mike, did you?
Yeah, nope, I would just confirm that there's no reason to hesitate getting a lender to pull up your credit scores. It's the beginning of the process, and regardless of what your credit score is, that's where you start no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And one question Tanjon has, is there a website that shows where you could pick that have no HOAs? Again, it would be your agent would be able to set up the MLS search. And if you don't want to live in an HOA, there's a category that says HOA no. And so you'll just make sure that they eliminate any options for HOA. And that would be the best way to avoid one.
Yeah, another thing about HOAs, most of the time there is in the articles of incorporation or the HOA formation documents a way where rules can be changed. Now, it does require a high percentage of the homeowners in the HOA to vote for that, but HOAs can be completely disbanded if that threshold is reached and the homeowners say, we don't want to do that. Is it likely? Unlikely. But again, if there's enough people in the neighborhood that want to change something, you'll have to read those documents again to see what that threshold is and talk to some neighbors and kind of see what that is. But I would recommend generally buying in a home where the rules already fit what you want it to be. Getting HOA rules changed, there's a pretty high threshold to getting that done.
Mhm. And Tanjan has one more question. She said, what about the credit scores again? If you could just touch on what you mentioned about credit scores.
Me or Mike?
Yeah, I could do it should if you're worried about your credit score, the best way to find out is to meet with a lender, let them pull it up and go from there. It's not going to affect it negative. If it's already that close, then you've got work to do anyway. So it's the starting process. It's
Mhm.
where you go. There's no
I will
reason to
also
ever have
mention,
a lender.
I was going to say, I will also mention that a lot of first time buyers are concerned about credit scores, and a lot of times they don't have to be. Having no
Correct.
credit doesn't disqualify you. There are programs where they can count your cell phone bills and other things if you have no credit, and they can kind of help you build credit. But having little credit is not the same as having bad credit. So if you're regularly taking out credit and not making payments, and you're in collections and things like that, you probably need to get that figured out before you start looking into buying a home. If you're generally taking out credit and making repayments, you're probably have a better score than you think you do. And the way to find out, as Mike said, is to talk with a qualified lender who can look at your score, look at your debts, look at your income, and help you put a plan in place for being, if you let them know that your goal is to become a homeowner, let them help you put a plan in place for that.
Yeah, I'll also add that you don't actually know what your credit score is because you could go pull it up from three different bureaus for three different reasons, whether it be a car, a credit card, and a lender. Why they vary so much, I have no idea. But you might think your credit score is 640 and they're going to tell you it's 670 or 610. They use a compilation of three credit scores and they might weigh one higher than the other, but most people don't know their actual credit score because it varies day to day by who's pulling it and what you're pulling it for.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
And Angelique mentioned you can pull your credit every year for free under freecreditreport.gov, which is accurate. And I do that myself. And I think most people do that. As you mentioned, if you get a credit score on when you log into your credit card or your banking, that's a range. It's not necessarily what the lender will use for a mortgage loan, as Mike said. So the only way to know if where you're at regarding a mortgage loan is to talk to a mortgage lender and have them do the pull under getting a new mortgage, and that will tell you where you're at with regard to home ownership.
Any other questions from everyone? Anything else that you can think of? Got one more. Do student loans have a major impact on buying a home? Good question. Um, you want to take that one, Ben?
It depends.
yep.
So the answer is it depends. I mean, it really does. So sometimes you can defer them. Sometimes how long they've been deferred is an issue. Sometimes there are programs for people with student loans. There are special loan programs for doctors and attorneys who are going to have major student loans. People that are going into high-paying industries, but are going to start out in the hole. So again, talking to credible lenders, talking to an exclusive buyer agent who can find lenders who might specialize in what you need would be a good first step.
I think the important thing to tell everyone is that first step is just reaching out to people, talking to people who can help you. And that would be the lender, the exclusive buyer's agent. Tell them what your plan is. Tell them, how you want to make this happen. And when you have professionals helping you in that way, you're going to have success. Even if whatever they tell you isn't going to make it happen right then, it
Yeah.
could happen a year later. Just recently, one of my preferred lenders here told me that somebody that I was working with, they said, they're going to hold off on buying. We've got a plan, and 6 to 8 months from now, they're going to be ready to buy. And I said, great. And that's what I wish for everyone, that you've got somebody who's going to be with you, making sure that you make the smart decisions.
Yeah. You remember what I said about looking for opportunities to increase your income if that's one of the required things. If you're not looking, you won't find it. And if you're not asking questions today about how do I get ready to buy a home, you won't get the answers.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Now, there's another good question you might want to answer in there.
Is Toll Brothers a good place to start? I'm getting
Nope,
emails.
go up.
Is that the one?
Toll
No.
Brothers is a builder. Their agents would represent the builder. I could be mistaken in your market. They may also be a real estate brokerage, but they are a new construction builder in our market, and they're typically one of the higher dollar builders in our market. So I'm not saying they're a bad place to start. I would start with getting an agent, getting a lender, figuring out your budget, and then seeing if Toll Brothers or anyone else has things in your budget. And I always recommend, sometimes I have clients that say, I had this happen last month. I have a specific home I already found. I want to buy this home. And my recommendation is always, let's look at it, but let's also look at a couple other homes that are on the market. Not because I'm trying to steer them away from it, but just because if you've only looked at one thing, you can't do a fair comparison of value. And so I would recommend, first, making sure you've got your finance, first, making sure you have someone you can trust to help guide you. Second, making sure your finances are in order. And then third, finding out what your options are, including anyone that's been emailing you or anything that's caught your eye. But I would not just jump in the door with somebody just because they've been marketing to you.
Hey,
I
Mike.
would look at everything else too.
Mike, would you answer
Yep.
Z's question? He says, what questions should I ask a realtor if there are no exclusive buyer agents in my area?
Yeah, I was hoping Ben would answer that one. That's a tough question. That's not unusual. There are great realtors in every market, regardless of the being exclusive buyers agents.
Yeah.
Reach out to friends or family. If you reach out to the National Association of Exclusive Buyers Agents, they will try to find somebody there that is being referred to them for being known for being a good broker's agent, even if they're not strictly buyers. So it goes back to what you do with everything you do. Do your research, ask friends and family. Don't jump into anything quickly. Find somebody that you like and trust. And that's how I tell people to find their realtor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen one more time because I did have a slide. I might have gone through it pretty quick here. Let's take a look and see if this works here. But take your time, as Mike said. Interview. Can you see this? Interviewing several agents. Find an agent that fits. So personality-wise is even important. You're going to work with them for a little while. You want to consider their experience. How long have you been doing this? Education. What type of designations or special skills do you have? Do you have negotiation skills? Have you earned any designations or certifications on buyer representation and such? Any specialties? Maybe they specialize in new construction or condos or high rises or something like that. And then ask, will they ask you to agree to dual agency? This is probably one of the key ones. If they say yes to that, we would recommend looking for somebody else. If they're going to try and represent you and the seller in the same transaction, we don't believe that's a good fit. We believe that you're better served by having an agent that's 100% on your side throughout your transaction. I would ask them, how can you save me money? Whether it's through loan shopping or negotiations or, just they should have good answers for that. And then I would ask for references. Definitely ask for references. A good agent should have references. So those are, hopefully that helps answer your questions.
Also, how quickly will you respond to my texts, my emails, my phone calls? I've heard people, in my opinion, they have horror stories of, I didn't hear back for 2 days. I think, how could that be, right?
Yeah.
If you have a question, somebody should be responding to you very quickly. And if they're not, then maybe you'll find somebody who will be much quicker to respond.
Yeah, excellent. I see something from Galaxy Note 9 about Charlotte, North Carolina being a major difference buying in the city versus in the country. It's similar here. I wouldn't necessarily say major, but there is a significant price difference if you buy rural in Salt Lake area versus buying in the city. I had a cousin who was in charge of some transportation down in LA in California, and similar things happen here, which is that as the city becomes very expensive, people start to migrate to the rural because the cost of the homes is generally less expensive for a while. But then when that becomes the demand, everyone starts going there. I'm not going to say the prices get higher than the city because I don't think that's true, but people start saying, well, I'm commuting an hour each way, maybe. How much is it worth? Why don't I just pay a little more to now live in the city? And it's not the same people, but there is definitely kind of an ebb and flow into and out of urban areas generally. But that's your choice. Again, I would think long term, 5 to 7 years. If you were to move to the country and you know what the commute is going to be like, and you feel like 5 to 7 years from now that would still be a great place to live, I would recommend it. If you're somebody who doesn't want to spend 2 hours commuting and you want to live in a condo downtown and not have a yard and just be where the action is, consider paying a little more for that. I mean, that's one of the great things about home ownership, and is it causes you, especially because of the commitment, to consider what's important to me. What's my lifestyle going to be like? The type of home you buy will affect your life for a long time. So good questions.
Yeah. Want to wrap it up then, I guess?
Yeah, I think that was great. Thank you all for coming. We'll try and do this again. If anyone is interested, like I said, we've got some slides or some PDFs, some worksheets we could put together for you. If you think that would be a good idea, just go ahead and type in the chat. If we get people saying they want that, then we'll probably just email that out to all of you. Might take us a couple days to grab everything and get it together. But that would be great. So thanks for hanging on. And like I said, share NAEBA.org. On NAEBA.org, you can sign up for our podcast that Victoria is the host of. It's called Listen Up Homebuyers. We also have a NAEBA newsletter. We'll put this all in the email so you can join too if you want to sign up for the podcast or the newsletter. And that way you can kind of keep in touch with us and keep asking questions. So,
yep. Well, thank you all very much. And with that, I guess we'll say good night.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.